My name is Stella Briggs. I'm 31 years old, and for 14 months, my parents cashed my disability checks without telling me. I want to say that clearly at the beginning, because it is the fact around which everything else organizes itself. And because when I first understood it, I spent 3 days trying to find a different explanation before accepting that there was no different explanation. The checks were $2,140 per month, 14 months, $30,000. My mother had been signing my name on the endorsement line since September 2022. She had been depositing the money into a joint account I had not known existed. She had been spending it on things I could not fully account for even after I reviewed the bank statements. When I confronted her about it, she said, "You owe us. You always have." I did not yell. I did not cry. I had spent the previous 8 months learning, slowly and at considerable cost, that the two most powerful things I could do in any conversation with my parents were to say very little and to write everything down. I said almost nothing. I called my social services caseworker the next morning. What happened after that took 11 months and changed the terms of my life in ways I am still mapping. I need to take you back to 2019 because nothing about what happened in 2002 makes sense without the years before it. I grew up in Macon, Georgia, second of 3 children, in a household that operated on a logic I spent most of my childhood accepting as normal, and most of my adulthood understanding was not. My parents, Gary and Diane Briggs, ran a small hardware supply business that was functional but perpetually stressed, the kind of business that paid the bills in good months and required sacrifice from everyone in bad ones. Sacrifice in our household was not a concept applied equally. My older brother, Cody, was understood to be the one the business would eventually pass to, which meant his labor and his time had a future value that exempted him from certain present costs. My younger sister, Kayla, was the youngest and was treated with the warmth that youngest children sometimes receive when the family has finally relaxed into itself. I was the middle. I was the one who was available for extra shifts at the store in high school, available to drive my grandmother to appointments, available to be helpful without being asked and without the helpfulness being particularly noticed. I was good at making myself useful. I did not fully understand until I was older that useful and valued are not the same thing. I left Macon for college in 2011, studied technical writing at Georgia State, graduated in 2013, got a job with a software company in Atlanta, writing documentation and user guides. I was good at it. I am still good at it. The work requires a particular combination of precision and patience that I apparently have in quantity, and which I have since understood I developed in a specific environment where being precise and patient was the primary survival skill available to me. I rented an apartment in Decatur. I built a small, quiet. I met a man named Trevor in 2015, married him in 2017, and began to understand within the first year of that marriage that I had chosen someone with many of the same structural qualities as my parents, charming in public, erosive in private, with a specific talent for making their comfort feel like your responsibility. I left Trevor in 2021. The divorce was final in January 2022. I was 29 years old, newly single, and 3 months removed from the car accident that had changed every practical calculation of my life. October 2021. I was driving home from a friend's apartment on a Sunday evening. A driver ran a red light on Ponce de Leon and hit the passenger side of my car at approximately 40 miles per hour. I was wearing my seatbelt, the airbag deployed. By the external indicators, I should have been fine. What the imaging showed was a compression fracture at the L2 vertebra and damage to the surrounding tissue that produced chronic pain and a neurological complication affecting my left leg, intermittent weakness, reduced sensation, the specific unreliability of a body that can walk normally for 3 days and then cannot be trusted on stairs on the 4th. I spent 6 weeks in acute care and 4 months in physical therapy. I learned to manage the symptoms. I did not recover to my previous baseline, and I have been told I should not expect to. I applied for Social Security disability insurance in February 2022. The application was approved in August 2022, which is actually unusually fast, and which my attorney, a woman named Denise Park, who specializes in disability cases, said was a function of thorough documentation and clear medical evidence. My monthly benefit was $2,140. The divorce was final in January. The accident had been in October. I was managing a chronic pain condition and a legal process and the emotional weight of a marriage ending simultaneously. I was still working remotely. The technical writing job had converted to fully remote during the pandemic, and the company had retained that structure, which meant my disability affected my life substantially, but did not immediately end my employment. I was getting by. Just getting by, but getting by. In April 2022, my parents called and said they had been talking and thought it might make sense for me to come home for a while. They said Macon would be easier, lower cost of living, familiar environment, family nearby. My mother said it would give me time to heal and figure out the next chapter. She said it the way she says things that have already been decided and are being presented as suggestions for the courtesy of the presentation. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for 6 weeks. I thought about Decatur and my apartment and the life I had built there, which was modest but mine. I thought about my leg on bad days, and the stairs in my building, and the distance between me and anyone who knew me before the accident. I thought about Trevor and the divorce and the specific loneliness of recovering from multiple things simultaneously. In June 2022, I loaded a storage unit with what I couldn't fit in my car and drove to Macon. My childhood bedroom is the second room on the left at the top of the stairs. It is 11 feet by 13 feet. It has a window that faces the backyard. My parents had been using it for storage after I left for college, boxes of Christmas decorations, an exercise bike that had never been used, 2 laundry baskets of things with no clear category. They cleared it before I arrived. They put a new mattress on the bed. My mother put fresh flowers on the dresser, which was a gesture I received with more gratitude than I now think it warranted. The rent conversation happened on my second day there. My father sat down at the kitchen table after breakfast and said that since I would be contributing to the household, they thought $1,200 a month was reasonable. He said it with the delivery of someone reading from a prepared text, which I believe it was. I said $1,200 a month for my childhood bedroom. He said it covered my share of utilities, groceries, and household expenses, and that it was fair given that they were providing stability during a difficult period. I sat with that for a moment. My disability benefit was $2,140 a month. My remote job paid $3,800. My total income was approximately $5,940 per month. $1,200 was 20% of that. Not impossible. Not nothing either. I said okay. I paid the first month in cash, which I recorded in a notebook I had started keeping after the divorce, because Denise Park had told me that documentation was the most valuable thing a person in transition could have, and I had taken that advice more broadly then. She intended. The notebook. I want to tell you about the notebook because it is the reason the story ends the way it does. I started it in January 2022 as a record of the divorce proceedings, dates, amounts, conversations, decisions. After the accident, I continued it as a medical record. Appointments, medications, symptoms, good days and bad days. When I moved to Macon, I continued it as a household record, rent payments, grocery contributions, any financial transaction that touched me. I wrote in it every evening, 2 or 3 sentences minimum, more on significant days. I am not a particularly organized person in most respects. The notebook was the exception. It was the one place where I was systematic, possibly because it was the one place where I felt the information was being preserved for someone. Not necessarily for a specific purpose, just preserved. The way my grandmother used to say you keep things, because you never know what you'll need. The first 8 months in Macon were livable. Not good, but livable. I worked from my bedroom during the day. I had dinner with my parents most evenings. My father and I watched television some nights. My mother and I were cordial in the way we had always been cordial, functional, careful, the specific warmth of people who love each other and have never fully understood each other and have arrived at a version of coexistence that works if no one examines it too closely. I paid my $1,200 on the first of every month. I recorded it in the notebook. My disability checks were supposed to be direct deposited to my bank account in Atlanta, a checking account I had maintained since college. where I also received my work paychecks. I reviewed that account monthly online. The disability deposits appeared in August, September, and October 2022. In November, they did not appear. I called the Social Security Administration in November. I was told the direct deposit information on my account had been updated in October and that the November payment had been issued. I said I had not updated my direct deposit information. The representative said the update had been made through a form submitted by mail in September, signed by the account holder. I said I had not submitted any form. There was a pause on the line. The representative gave me a reference number and told me to call back with it and ask for the fraud unit. I wrote the reference number in the notebook. I called back the next day. I was connected to someone who walked me through the process of filing a report of potential unauthorized account access. I filed the report. I was told it would be reviewed and that I would receive correspondence. I did not tell my parents about the call. I want to be honest about why. Part of it was that I did not yet know what I was looking at. The information was incomplete, and I had trained myself since the divorce not to make accusations before I understood the full picture. Part of it was something I could not name clearly at the time, but that I understand now as a kind of dread. The particular dread of a person who suspects something about someone they love and does not want to be right. I went to bed that night and lay in my childhood bedroom in the dark and thought about my mother's handwriting and whether I had ever seen her sign my name for anything, and could not remember a specific instance, but could not rule it out either. I wrote in the notebook, November payment missing, filed report, waiting. The Social Security correspondence arrived in December, a letter stating that an investigation had been opened into potential misuse of benefits and requesting that I contact them to verify my identity and provide documentation. I called. Over the following 3 weeks, I provided my identification, my medical records, documentation of my disability determination, and a statement describing what I knew. The investigator, a woman named Ms. Carruthers, was professional and careful and told me very little about the direction of the investigation, but told me enough for me to understand it was moving. In January 2023, I asked her directly whether the investigation had identified where the payments had been going. She said she was not able to share specific findings during an active investigation, but that I should ensure my direct deposit information was restored to my own account, and that I should consider consulting a personal attorney if I had concerns about civil liability. I called Denise Park that afternoon. Denise Park is a small woman with very precise diction who has been practicing law in Atlanta for 202 years. And who I trust with my financial life in the specific way you trust someone who has already seen you at your most vulnerable and handled the information without flinching. I told her what I knew. She asked me several questions I had not thought to ask myself. Then she said, "Stella, I need you to do something for me before our next call. I need you to go to your bank and request complete transaction records for the period August 2022 to present, and I need you to ask whether any joint accounts are associated with your Social Security number." I said I would. She said do it tomorrow, not this week. I did it the next morning. There was a joint account, opened in August 2022, associated with my Social Security number. The second account holder was listed as Diane Briggs, my mother. The account had received 14 deposits between August 2022 and September 2023. 14 disability payments, totaling $29,960. The account had a current balance of $412. The remainder had been spent. The transaction records showed grocery purchases, utility payments, a car repair in March, a home improvement store charge in May, a vacation booking in July that I recognized as a trip my parents had taken to Destin that they had mentioned as a good deal they had found. I sat in the bank's small consultation room with the records in my hands for a long time. The bank associate across from me was a young man who looked like he was not sure what expression to have. I thanked him. I took the documents. I drove home. I did not go inside immediately. I sat in the driveway for approximately 40 minutes. I thought about $30,000. I thought about $1,200 a month for 15 months, which was $18,000 I had paid in rent for my childhood bedroom. I thought about September 2022, when my mother had submitted a form to redirect my disability checks, and I had been in this house, sleeping in this bedroom, paying rent, and she had been doing that. I thought about the Destin trip. I thought about the flowers on the dresser on my first day. Then I went inside. My mother was in the kitchen. I put the bank documents on the table in front of her. I said, "I need you to explain this to me." She looked at the documents for a long time without touching them. Then she said the thing I have replayed more times than I can count. She said, "You owe us. You always have. This is what we're owed for everything we've given you." I asked her what she meant. She said, "The room, the support, everything since the accident, everything before it. You have always taken more than you gave back, and this was our way of balancing it." I asked her where the money was now. She said it was gone, spent on the household. I asked whether she understood what she had done. She said she understood that she had taken care of her daughter the best she could, and that the money was compensation for that. I said, "Mom, you forged my signature on a federal form and redirected my disability benefits to an account I didn't know existed. That is fraud." She looked at me and said, "Don't be dramatic." I went to my bedroom. I called Denise Park. I gave her everything: the bank documents, the account details, the conversation I had just had. I told her about the notebook. She said the notebook was going to be very important. She said, "Stella, I need you to stay calm and stay in the house for the time being, and not confront your parents again until we have spoken further." I said, "Okay." She said, "You have done everything right. I want you to hear that." I said, "Thank you." I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed in my childhood room and looked at the window that faced the backyard and thought about the flowers on the dresser on my first day, and whether my mother had known then what she was doing, or whether it had started as something smaller and grown into what it became. I do not know the answer to that. I have thought about it many times. I do not know. The legal process took 11 months. I am not going to detail every step because Denise has advised ongoing discretion, and because 11 months of legal process is its own kind of story that does not reduce well to summary. What I can tell you is the structure of what happened. The Social Security fraud investigation concluded with a finding that supported the report I had filed. My mother was required to repay the full amount of the misdirected benefits through a structured restitution agreement. The civil case Denise filed on my behalf, regarding the joint account and the unauthorized use of my financial identity, resulted in a judgment that included the $18,000 I had paid in rent, which Denise argued had been extracted under false pretenses, given the concurrent unauthorized financial activity. My father, who had known about the account, I learned this through the civil discovery process, through a document I was not expecting and that I have read many times since, was named in the civil case as well. The restitution and civil judgment total is significant. It is being paid in installments. It will take years. I moved out of my parents' house in March 2023. I moved back to Atlanta, to a one-bedroom apartment in Decatur, 2 blocks from my old street, which felt like something I had not planned but that my body seemed to know was correct. I carried my boxes up the stairs on a good leg day, which felt like the kind of small mercy that arrives sometimes when you need it most. I sat at my desk by the window. I made coffee. I opened my laptop and worked for 4 hours, and then I went to bed in my own space for the first time in 9 months. And I slept without the particular vigilance that I had not fully realized I had been maintaining every night. In Macon, until it was no longer necessary. My relationship with my parents is something I think about carefully and do not yet know how to describe. My father called me in May 2023. The call was 8 minutes. He said he was sorry in the specific way of a person who is sorry about consequences more than actions, which is a distinction I have learned to hear clearly. I said I appreciated the call. I did not say more than that. My mother has not called. I have not called her. My sister Kayla texts me occasionally, careful messages that do not mention our parents directly. And I text back in kind, because Kayla is not responsible for what happened, and I do not want to lose her over it. My brother Cody sent one email in August 2023 that said he didn't know what to say, and I wrote back that I understood and that we could talk when he was ready. We have not talked yet. I am leaving the door open because I have learned that some things need more time than you think they will, and that deciding in advance how long is enough is a way of closing things that might otherwise remain possible. The notebook is in my desk drawer. I have started a new one. I write in it most evenings, 2 or 3 sentences minimum, more on significant days. I am not sure I will always need it the way I needed it then, but I keep it because you keep things, because you never know what you'll need. Because my grandmother was right about that, and she was right about a lot of things, and keeping records in careful handwriting is one of the ways I stay connected to her version of paying attention. The window in my Decatur apartment faces east. On good leg days, I walk to the coffee shop 2 blocks over and sit outside for an hour before work. The coffee is better than the coffee in Macon. Everything here is better than the coffee in Macon. I am 31 years old, and I am starting over for the 3rd time in 4 years, and I am choosing, deliberately and with full awareness of how hard it is, to understand that as a thing I am capable of, rather than a thing that keeps happening to me. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment. Tell me, at what point would you have walked out? I want to know. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.